You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings Podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
This is the Horror Ramblings Podcast, the show about all things horror. I am your host, Lester Blosser, joined by my co-host and good friend, the extremely talented Stephen White. Hello, how are you doing today, Stephen?
Doing all right. How about yourself?
Oh, can't complain. We were just on recording another podcast today.
That's right, we were. And that should already be out by the time you hear this. But hey, it's cross energy. You can figure that out.
I got to guest star on Super Mega Crash Bros. Turbo today, which was a real treat. I hope I did the show justice. I'm pretty sure I did halfway decent.
I think you did really well. We've had bad guests before. You were pretty solid.
Well, let's hope the fans here head over and they check that out. I think they'll enjoy that show quite a bit, as well as all the other shows you guys have. Over 200 episodes worth to go ahead and search through there. There's a lot of good content there, though. So even the older episodes, even if it's stuff that's already come out, there's still some really good content there to hear.
And plus, it's fun to see how the show progresses. Like
Yes.
what we were doing to what we're doing now. It's definitely evolved.
Yeah, and I can't wait until this show gets to the point where it evolves enough to where we're like, man, we've come a long way. Because it's a process. It is.
Yeah.
I'll
And
admit.
I think that's the beauty of it. I mean, we're not sitting here expecting everything to just knock it out of the park. We put our energy into it. We put our love into it. But we got to find our footing. Got to find our voice. Find out what works, what doesn't. And hopefully the audience will respond.
Yeah, and honestly, it takes time. I mean, you know, we launched our very first episode, Friday the 13th, and we're getting some traction. It takes some time, but eventually we'll have so many episodes, somebody will be like, man, there's like 100 of these things. There's 200 of these things. Maybe we should give this a listen.
Yeah, maybe we check it out. See what's going on.
So before we get into the guts of the show, no pun intended, any news on the front that you would like to discuss before we get started?
I do want to talk about cursed films on Shudder because I don't know if you've been watching any of the episodes this season, but they've had some pretty interesting ones. And the last episode that I watched, oh boy, man, I've heard things, but seeing people talk about it, like people who were there. Cannibal Holocaust was the subject of their most recent episode. I was unaware of some of that. Like, I've never seen it. I've seen the Green Inferno, which is Eli Roth's spiritual remake or whatever you want to call it to that.
It's his love. It's his love letter to the original.
Yeah, there you go.
think.
But like I've always had, it's one of those things you hear in the back of your head. You know, I think I got it built up in some way that I'm worried that there's going to be something so horrendous that I'm just going to be like, oh man, I didn't really want to see that. I could have done my whole life without seeing it, and then now I've seen it because of this movie. That's what I have in my head. Whether it's going to be that or not, I don't know. I've seen a cannibal movie, so it's not like it's that far removed. That said, some of the shit that they do in this movie, it's disturbing on its own merits and real, where they kill animals apparently.
Yeah.
Every scene where they killed the animals was real, and they tried to justify it. Like the pig said, "Nah, we're gonna eat it later." It's like, yeah, but you're filming it, dude. And some people don't want to see that. And then they killed a turtle, this giant turtle, like gutted it and everything. And they said, "No, this actually happened." And I'm like, what? So, damn, you know. And that's just talking about animals. That's not even talking about some of the other stuff that some of the cast had to go through and everything. Ah, man, it was rough. And they even kind of gave a disclaimer, which I've never seen on the show before, because they were going to be showing and talking about the animal cruelty and some of the messed up scenes in the movie, the rape of one of the native girls and stuff like that, and she was only 14. And you're just sitting there going, what are you talking? What are you doing, man? And it really makes you just disturbed in so many ways, to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't know if I really want to watch this movie at all because of what I've seen and heard here. like I don't feel like I'm missing a damn thing if I don't
Yeah.
watch it.
Yeah, that's one of those movies. It's hit or miss. I mean, with all the talk that they've had about it, it seems like you know everything you need to know about it. The reviews
Yeah.
for it and everything tell you everything that you need to know about it.
Mm.
And they got in a lot of trouble with it wasn't just PETA, it was a few other organizations because of everything that happened with the animals and everything. And killing the turtle, I know was actually really cruel. They didn't.
Oh yeah.
The pig's death was a little quicker, but the death of the turtle was kind of brutal. So.
Oh yeah. Like they didn't show every detail, and I don't know how detailed the movie gets with it, but the fact you just saw its shell hollowed out, you're just like, Jesus Christ, man, come on.
Yeah.
You know, and you knew it was real because they were talking about it before they showed it, and you're just like, ugh. So I don't know if I think I could pass.
Right.
I think one of the reasons I was even going to watch it is they showed it on the last drive-in, and I thought, what a better place to check it out than there, but I don't know, man. I just don't know.
Maybe with the last drive-in, maybe that would make it bearable. Maybe some of their discussion would help with the film. I don't know if that would be enough to make it justifiable.
It's definitely one of the reasons I would probably consider watching it more, is because the last drive-in does make it more digestible. Speaking of which, they showed a movie, and of course this will play our hand as to when we're actually recording this, but who cares? The episode they aired the other night on the drive-in, I watched the first movie. I didn't stick around for the second. I've heard of the second. I feel like I'd heard of the first, but I'd never seen it, so it was kind of a treat. Called The Little Girl Down the Lane with Jodie Foster and Martin Sheen.
Okay, yeah.
I know I've probably heard of it, but it was just one of those that I've possibly seen on IMDb, and I was just like, oh, okay. Well, that was a movie they did at one point in time, but this is apparently like one of Jodie Foster's earliest films before she blew up, because I think right after this she did Taxi Driver. Same with Martin Sheen. He hadn't quite found his foothold in Hollywood yet. People knew him as an actor or as a good actor, but he just hadn't quite had that hit, and then I think he had just done a movie prior to this, but it was in post-production when he started filming this, and that movie, which Joe Bob mentions, but I can't remember what it was, that's what catapulted him.
Yeah.
So he just happened to be in this one before that one, and I don't know, just the timing of it all, it was just funny, but everyone was apparently impressed by Jodie Foster and saw her talent at 13. It's an interesting movie. I don't know if I would call it a horror movie per se, but it's a bit of a slow burn of a movie. Martin Sheen plays a creep pedophile.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's just like, what? And it ended on, like, I don't feel like I was in the right mindset for the ending at the time, but a little reflection after it ended, I was like, yeah, I guess that's where it needed to end. Because maybe I was looking at the movie through a different lens, and we needed to understand what the movie was technically about.
Mm-hmm.
Like what they were trying to say, or what the mystery was that they were trying to contain. And then the ending pretty much spells it out for you. It's like, oh no, yeah, this is what happened. Excuse me, I had a sneeze.
You're good.
But it was still, it's definitely worth a watch. And the commentary Joe Bob put into it, obviously is always a delight. So I would check it out. Homebound was, again, I passed on it. Something I'll just come back around to because I was tired. But a lot of people talked pretty good about it. And his opening thing, he gave it like 2.5 stars. So maybe he's not that much of a fan of it. But, he still said check it out as he normally does. So I might have to check it out at some point. It was just not at the top of my, like, oh my God, I've got to watch this movie tonight kind of things. Because I don't have any reservations about it, so I don't know.
I will have to actually sit down and watch, because it's been a minute since I've watched The Last Drive-In. And it's been a minute since I've watched Cursed Films. I started Cursed Films, but it seems like something always tends to come up when I try to watch things for whatever reason. But I've heard great things about it, and from what you've talked about with it, again, just something I'm going to have to watch. I mean, there's so much content out there, and I think it'd be interesting to do a show about cursed films. Maybe talk on some of the points that they bring up and give our own opinions on them, because there are some cursed films. And actually, one of the films that I will be talking about today is considered a cursed film. So that will be interesting. Do you have any other news for me that you'd like to share? Have you been working on anything new?
Not anything to speak of. I have been doing work. I have been working on a few things outside of, normal things, but not anything I want to talk about just yet.
Nothing yet. Okay.
I'm trying to, I don't know. I was in a place this week, I guess, because the show officially launched this week. As we're talking, but trying to make sure all that was taken care of, and just making sure the path was paved and everything was taken care of and right, and promoting and all that jazz. So yeah, and plus I had a little extra work on Super Mega Crash this week too.
Which the show, I think the premiere episode turned out well. Mm-hmm. I can't wait for more people to hear it and maybe give us some reviews. We would love some 5-star reviews.
For sure. And something we have talked about, and I know this will be a little late, but just we're coming back around to it. If you listen to episode 2 and you had a problem with the audio, just it was a mistake. There was just a little. It happens. We'll try not to make it happen again, but it just happens. Sometimes we have technical difficulties. I hope you'll just forgive us for that one little snafu.
And honestly, I'll kind of piggyback on that. The quality of the audio is good. It's just the actual show sounds a little different than the opening. And it's a noticeable thing, but the subject matter is perfection. It's still fantastic subject matter. So, But like you said, technical difficulties, they happen to the best of us. Yeah. So, well, I guess if you don't have any other news for us today, I will go ahead and get us into the heart of what today's show is about. I had a weird title for it. This might not be the actual title of the show. I called it Junky Treasures and Treasured Junk. This whole episode is going to be about films that are held in the highest of regards that we just can't stand. Maybe we like certain things about them, but overall, not necessarily the movie for us. Right, and then movies that most people think are just garbage that we absolutely love. I know everybody has their films that they love that other people are like, why? Yeah, I have a feeling today's episode is going to put us at a little bit of a divide in some areas. I think we will have a few little disagreements. A lot of mine, I have 3 main films that a lot of people love, and I'm just kind of, I don't necessarily hate them. It's not that I hate the films. It's just I'm not gonna go out of my way to watch them, I guess is the best way to put it. And then there's 2 movies I can think of off the top of my head that I really enjoy that a lot of people don't really enjoy, and one of them's kind of a doozy, so that should be kind of fun. So I don't know how you want to do this. We can go one at a time if you like. We can each name a film, talk about it, and then name another one. So whatever you think would be more. I say
we can kind of ping pong. So you start, I'll go. You start, just back and forth. Do about 2 or 3 and see where we're at, and then go to the next. Hate it or love it or whatever.
Sounds good. All right. Well, the first one is probably the safest one on my list. Okay. One movie that I could do without is Paranormal Activity. Okay. I like found footage films. I do. And all of the films that I seem to not like have a theme for me. It's all kind of the same thing in the regard of I like slow burn films, but there's certain slow burn films that I don't like. Yeah. To me, the payoff at the end of the original Paranormal Activity wasn't enough. It was at the time when that movie came out, this was something new. Mm-hmm. It played on the whole, these were real events, this really happened, yada, 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 yada. I just was so bored watching it. Yeah. And I didn't care for the characters. I understand that it's found footage. I completely understand that it's found footage. But it was just boring. It seemed like a home video of a couple who was just slowly getting on each other's nerves. Mm-hmm. And, there's a ghost in here apparently. Okay, whatever. I found it so very boring. Yeah. and it's a slow burn, and it's an extremely slow burn. And with a slow burn, I want a good payoff at the end. I want that slow burn to turn into a huge fire. This one was a slow burn that burned out for me. And people love it. People talked about it. It got great reviews. It was one of the best movies ever, one of the most successful horror movies ever. And I'm just like, why? Like I said, again, I love found footage, but that one just did not do it for me because it was slow and I found it boring and I did not like the characters. I tried to like the sequels. I even tried to like those. And again, there were certain things that they did in the sequels that I thought were okay. They kind of, played off of the ghost. It became more malicious and everything as the films went on and progressed. But overall, the whole franchise to me is just one of those, if I never see one, I don't care. Yeah, Even I can't remember which one it was, but they actually did some. The whole gimmick of the movie was they did something to the camera so that you could see where the ghost was, and it appeared weird. I think the only scene that I actually ever really enjoyed out of any of them is the one movie where the little girl is saying that she's playing with her friend or whatever, and they're like, "There's nobody there," and she turns off the light in the bathroom, and you see the silhouette there. I thought that was cool, but other than that, like I said, boring. And I wish I could get more in depth about why I don't like it, but it's a simple reason. I found the film boring, and the payoff has never been worth it to me. So that's my first one. So I'm gonna wait on these other ones because your reaction's gonna be entertaining, I think.
Okay.
You name one of yours. Go ahead.
I could definitely agree with you on that. I did watch some of those, and I got to a point, I think third or fourth, where I was just like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to watch anymore. They were entertaining for what they were, but yeah, nothing to come back to. So speaking of boring, and this may actually be kind of on the same. You might be thinking I'm leaning one way, but I know it's a popular horror film, or at least it seemed to be. Based on a video game, Silent Hill is not something I ever got into. I am familiar with the game series, and maybe that shouldn't matter. I just found it to be banal and a drag, and I just didn't give a damn about anybody in the movie. It was kind of like you said, a slog, and I didn't care about anything. I checked out halfway through going, I don't know what I'm watching. I don't want to watch this anymore, and I don't remember what happened. It was just dull.
And I definitely see that. The only thing that is redeemable about Silent Hill, I just have to say this real quick. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just have to say this
go ahead.
real quick. I did like the special effects in Silent Hill. I thought they designed their monsters decently for the time and everything. And Pyramid Head looked amazing. So I will give them credit there. But I do see where you're coming from. Not very likable characters.
No, it makes it hard to watch something like that when, you feel like you should be able to relate as a parent or something like that. Maybe other people relate less because they're not in that same situation. But I couldn't relate to this person. I couldn't relate to the character. It was just like, screw you. I don't like any of this. I really don't have much to say on it. I just remember I hated this movie. I did not like it at all.
And that's kind of the bad thing about talking about the ones that we don't like, because there's nothing memorable about them.
Yeah, we just didn't like it. It was like, hell with this. Care about this. So yeah, I don't like it. Go ahead.
Now, my second one is, I'm sure it was on Cursed Films, and again, it was a slow burn, and there's only a few memorable things about it, and I might get some grief from some people for this one.
Okay.
The Omen.
Okay.
The original Omen. It's held in high regard.
It is.
Interesting story. I'll give it that. Again, it's another kind of slow burn. But again, to me, the film feels like we're just watching a kid who's throwing tantrums, being just a really bad kid. And yes, he's the Antichrist, so yeah, he's supposed to be really bad, but give me more of that Antichrist vibe. Give me more of that feel.
Right.
I know that there's things that happen in the movie that, pointed at that. I love the beginning scene when the nanny is, out with the rope around her neck. It's all for you, and she jumps at the party. Great. That was an epic scene. Wonderful scene. And then at the end, evil actually wins.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen in a ton of horror movies. I mean, it does and it doesn't. It's like yes, it kind of happens to hint, that there's going to be a sequel, but this one is just blatantly evil wins. And I like that whole thought process to it. The thing that really surprises me, though, is I find the behind-the-scenes stuff more interesting than I find the actual movie. There were a lot of accidents on set. Two of the producers, I believe it was, they were on opposite flights, and around the same time, their planes each got struck by lightning.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yeah,
That
was on Cursed Films.
One of the stunt coordinators got injured. The guy that trained the dogs in it, his dogs turned on him and attacked him.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that is way more interesting than the movie itself. And I find that just mind-blowing that's the case. But again, I think maybe the reason that I find these films kind of boring and they're not on the top of my list is simply because when I was at the age where I watched them, I was not in the mindset to have that much patience for them.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. But seeing them the first time put a sour taste in my mouth, and I just can't come back to them. And when I try to come back to them, I just can't.
Yeah.
A film that I love that's a slow burn, real quick. Jaws. Jaws was one of your first, films that got you into horror.
Mm-hmm.
Jaws is kind of a slow burn, but they keep it interesting. They keep it suspenseful.
Yeah.
They're really good at it. I feel like with these movies, the suspense just isn't there. But yeah, I would say The Omen is my second one. I have a feeling we're going to get through our ones we don't like fairly quickly.
Probably. I mean, I'll actually defend The Omen. I feel like it's a great movie. It's got great actors, great director behind it. And I can see where you're coming from. I can see where the slow burn would kind of be, an off-putting thing. It's happened to me before. The first introduction I had to The Omen was not younger, but as an older film buff. So maybe that's why I have a better appreciation for it. Like you said, as a child or someone who's a little bit more impatient, the slow burn doesn't quite work. But as an adult, I'll watch it and I'm like, all right, I see what they're doing. I get it. Yeah. And, I mean, I'm going to say something sacrilegious here. If we're talking about slow burn movies, I'll go ahead and say this. And for the same reason you were saying what you said, I have a movie that was a slow burn for me that I just didn't quite get, and I've had a hard time coming back to it. I want to watch it again because I feel like I could appreciate it better now, but I'm hesitant for the same reasons you said. You come to it and you're just like, I don't want to be bored for 2 hours. And that is Rosemary's Baby. I know Roman Polanski is held in high regard, but he's also a pedophile, and we're not going to get into that. But I watched it one time, and I respect every decision in the movie. I respect the story. I mean, there's a lot of good ideas there. I don't think I was in the right mindset to understand it fully and understand what it was attempting to be. I had preconceived notions about what I thought this movie was about. And then I go in, and it's not the movie I thought it was going to be, and it just felt dull and plodding for 2 hours. And the ending was about the only thing I found interesting because I was like, okay, well, what's going on here? I mean, finally you get all the truths out, and I wanted to know, like, at that point I was intrigued. I was like, all right, now I'm in, and then cut the credits, and I was like, well, shit. I said, the moment I got interested, you cut it off. So I don't know if I could look at it through a different lens now because I understand it more. And perhaps I could enjoy it and appreciate what it is. Because I have wanted to watch it again. I've just, like you said, I remember what my initial reaction was. And I don't want to watch it again and just be like, well, here we are. We're back to being bored to tears.
Well,
and maybe I will be. I don't know.
Yeah, and, I think with The Omen, too, what really did it for me was I went to the movie theater to see the remake that they did of it. And I didn't find the remake enjoyable either. I thought, well, you know what? Maybe if I go see the remake, I might find something that I enjoy about it, or I might find something that will push me to watch the original again. Because I'm weird like that. I'll watch a remake, and then I'll be like, I'm going to go back to the original because I want to, like, compare. I want to do this. I still just, even the remake, I'm just, like, I check out. And, it's nothing against the cast or anything. Wonderful cast in the films and everything. It's just, like I said, that slow burn at the time that I watched it put a sour taste in my mouth, I think. And I know it's not a bad film to people. Maybe it's just not my thing.
Right.
So,
and I think that's something I want to clarify to our audience. I don't think that we have a problem with slow burn films. It's just those particular ones were just not for us in that moment in time. I remember the first time I watched Good Will Hunting. I don't remember anything about it, and I thought it was a terrible film. I finally gave it a chance years later with a fresh perspective, and I was like, damn, this is a really good movie. And I got it. So sometimes, I mean, that might be what we need to do. But if we watch it a second time and we just don't, it doesn't connect, it's just not for us. And
exactly.
that's okay. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about the things that you love and hate.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Always give things another chance and look at it from a different perspective, because you might understand things a little bit better,
right,
and enjoy it more. So what would another one be for you?
Oh boy. Probably gonna get flack for this one too, because I did watch this. I was in a kick for the director, and I've heard a lot of people love this film. I just didn't get it, and that is Prince of Darkness by John Carpenter. I just didn't get it. Like, I tried. I was in a good spot to feel like I should be able to understand what's going on with this film and everything being plotted out. The guy who turned me on to it, he's a huge Carpenter fan. He was floored by my reaction. He's like, what? Are you kidding me? And I was like, I'm sorry, I just don't get it. And he's like, just watch it again. I'm like, no, I don't want to watch this again. He was also the same guy that tried to get me to watch Videodrome for a second time, and damn him for that. But yeah, I know it's a Carpenter classic, or at least maybe it's a cult classic of his. Not my cup of tea. I love, what's his name? In Halloween, I'd see his face. Dr. Loomis, what's his name? I cannot think of his name. I see his face.
You asked me too quick.
Donald Pleasance. God.
There it is.
Jesus. No, I love him. I love anything he's in, and he was in that movie, and he was great. I just didn't get the movie. I did not understand a thing. So I do not like that movie. I've had a really hard time even considering. Now, if they play it on the drive-in, I might give it another chance. Do I think I'll like it again, or like it the second time around? No, I don't, because I still don't understand what happened in the movie. Like I said, I was in a clear head at the time. I don't understand the movie, period.
Yeah, I mean, with any movie, though, you have to go in and have that understanding. And if that's not there, then it's just not there.
Yeah.
I've gone in and watched countless films, not even just horror films, just countless films. And you go in, and pardon the language here, but this is the best way to put it. I've sat there and watched movies and gone, what the fuck was this?
Yeah.
Like, what did I just watch? What did I just experience? And it kills me that you see these great actors, these great performers get into these films, and you're like, you want to like it. You want to love everything about it. And you wonder what's going on. And maybe sometimes I'm just a little dumbed down and I don't understand what's going on in certain things. Maybe they wrote it a certain way, but it didn't come out a certain way. I mean, there's all kinds of things, I think.
Yeah, I'm starting to think there might be just a disconnect in the narrative to our tastes, or maybe the way we perceive things. Because take, for example, I don't know if you've seen this movie, and I won't go into great detail about it if you haven't, but Lamb seems like a movie that it has one of those endings that would probably frustrate a lot of a casual audience, to where they're just like, what the hell kind of ending is that? But when I got to the end of it, I had a moment where I had to stop and think, and then I was like, I got it. So I connected. I know what that ending means to me. It may be one of those situations where the movie has an ending that's open to interpretation. What do you feel like that meant in that moment? And I know that can piss a lot of people off. Yeah. It's like, well, this isn't my story. This is your damn story. You tell me what the ending means. I don't want to have to think. But in that instance, I got it. Now, Prince of Darkness may have had that, and I just didn't connect the pieces. Like, they weren't clear to me. In Lamb, it was clear. Like, I got from what I gathered of the pieces, that's what my conclusion was. That might just be the issue here. I just didn't connect to whatever Carpenter was trying to say or explain, and maybe he did leave it open to interpretation. I just missed it. And that could happen.
And I think with some films, too, when you are kind of disconnected with it. Sometimes I think it's a good idea, especially now. You know, it used to be you couldn't get on the internet and, you know, look at stuff and, you know, see what other people were thinking. I'll go to YouTube sometimes after I've watched a certain movie and, like, there's just a disconnect for me, and I'll find other people that are talking about it or talking about theories and things like that. And I think that opens up a whole other world of possibility.
Yeah.
In some films. Not every film can be justified by that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that helps me sometimes, at least in that regard. But yeah, I mean, if you disconnect from the film, then, you know, you again, try going back to it once. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You know, not everybody's gonna get the same takeaways from a film, especially in the horror genre. I mean,
Sure.
you know, I'm kind of nervous about this next one that I'm going to be talking about, because there's
Go for it. I want to hear it.
this. So this is a twofer. I'm going to just kind of bundle these two together, and these are two major films.
All right.
And there's things about these films I love, but again, there's kind of a slow burn. It's not that I find them boring. It's just both these films, I can go without watching the whole film. There's just snippets of the film that I enjoy watching, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
Oh man. I hope we don't lose listeners for this one. So, my twofer here, The Exorcist
Oh boy.
and The Shining.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right. Explain yourself.
Oh man, I love The Exorcist for the effects, for the acting. I think the performances were fantastic. The build-up seems paced well as far as the film goes. It's a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It is a good movie. Here's the weird reason why it's sort of not on my list of films that I really enjoy. It's been so popular for so long, and it's been seen as so controversial. Even when I was little, it was always, oh, The Exorcist is way too scary for anybody to watch. It's one of the most disturbing films of all time. You know, people ran out of the theater when it came out, and this, that, and the other. And I'm sure at the time that was the case. I never found it as scary as what they made it out to be.
So, high expectation.
And that's exactly what it is. For what it is a fantastic film. There's just so much hype around it that it killed it for me. And I hate to say that, but I think that happens a lot. There's a lot of hype for something. You go and see it, and you're almost let down by it.
I will actually piggyback off of that for two movies. Matter of fact, one for the same exact thing you're talking about. Something held in such high regard, and then when you finally check it out, you're like, huh. Citizen Kane.
Yes.
Considered the greatest movie of all time. First time I watched it, I got to the end, I'm like, okay. And maybe in the moment, I just had I'm waiting to be blown away. And it was just an okay movie to me because expectations up here. That's another movie I want to rewatch again. My expectations are low now. Maybe I'll appreciate it in a different light. But when I hear people say, "It's just the greatest movie ever made," I'm like, shut up, you pretentious dick. You're just saying that because that's what everyone says. And anytime someone says, "Hey, name an overrated movie," Citizen Kane. That's my answer because that's how I feel about it. I can't help it.
It's like a bandwagon movie.
Yeah.
And that's where I sit with The Exorcist. It's like a bandwagon horror film. Everybody's like, it's one of the best movies ever. Love the movie for its effects. I love the movie for what it is. So I guess it's kind of teetering on my list, I guess you could say. It's not a film that I hate. It's just a film that I can do without. I like the performances in it. Overall, it's a solid film. It is.
Yeah.
I'll give it that all day long. It is a solid film. But like I said, you have all this expectation. And our first episode, I believe it was in the first episode, possibly. I talked about my sister's experience with The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And what she went through. And, that stuck with her. So that did scare the crap out of her. As far as I go, the first time I watched The Exorcist, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I thought this was the scariest movie of all time. And I'm just sitting there like, huh. The effects are great. Everything else, it's got a great ending. But yeah, to me, I could take it or leave it. If it's on TV, and I don't really see anything else on that I want to watch, I'll watch it. But if it's on TV and then I flip and Gremlins is on or Critters is on or something like that, I'm like, I'd rather laugh at this film than then watch this right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, people can judge me if they want. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm not saying I hate the movie, just saying it's not necessarily for me because the hype did not live up to what I was hoping it would live up to.
That's understandable.
And it let me down in that regard. The Shining is sort of the same in that regard. I think The Shining's kind of a slow burn as well. And when I learned about Kubrick, when I learned more about him, it really turned me off from The Shining even more because, what's the best way to put this? He was a dick during that movie. What was the woman's name?
Shelley Duvall.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He bullied her so much that after that film, she like basically stepped away from Hollywood for the most part. I think she did some other films and whatnot, but like he had her broken down so much on the set because he was just so rude to her and just degrading and everything else. You know, even Stephen King says that is his least favorite adaptation that's ever been made. And again, I don't think The Shining's a bad movie.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of hype around it, and it has moments where it's kind of a slow burn, and I'm just like, okay, are we gonna pick up a little bit? You know, I remember watching it one time. I think I fell asleep during it, and I woke up. I come to when Jack Nicholson's got the axe and he's hacking at the door. And, you know, I love Jack Nicholson. He could be in the crappiest movie ever, and I'd still watch it because he's in it. Because
He's an actor. He's an actor I miss a lot.
Yes. I'll tell you, though, I saw a picture of him recently going into a basketball game, and he's every bit of 400 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, he's I mean, you know, you got to give the guy credit, though. He's in his 80s now, and I guess his memory's not as good as it used to be. That's kind of why he stepped away from acting.
It's understandable.
You know, they didn't want him in The Shining originally because the character of Jack Torrance was supposed to be like a more loving, gentle-looking character, and Jack Nicholson, he looks like he'd hack somebody up with an axe.
Yeah, he's got
and I mean that.
Look.
Yeah, and you know, I mean it in the best of ways. But you know, like I said, the Shining just, again, I think it was a hype thing for me. And when I found out some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, it really just turned me off from it. I still
understand, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I still like the performances in it and everything. And fun horror fact of the day, which I'm probably going to do a lot of these throughout the episodes. Maybe it'll become a new thing. They actually had to use a real door instead of a prop door when Jack Nicholson was hacking at the door with the axe.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to do that because Jack Nicholson was a fire marshal at one point in time.
Huh.
And he was so strong and he could swing an axe so accurately that he was going through the prop doors like it was nothing. So they actually had to use a stronger door for that scene because of that. Didn't know if you knew that, but that's a fun little fact of the day.
If I've heard it, I don't remember, so that was a nice refresher.
But as far as films I don't particularly care for, I will agree with you on Rosemary's Baby too. I wanted to point that out earlier. I will agree with you on that as well. I'm kind of in the same place as you are with that. But as far as like horror films that fall kind of flat on my list that a lot of people tend to really love, those are probably the biggest choices that I have. I'm sure I could come up with some more, but those are the ones that I would say for now would be the best ones to point out. So the floor is yours.
Well, I will definitely disagree with The Exorcist and The Shining. I love them both, and I have nothing bad to say about them. So, but that's my opinion. That's my opinion. That's the beauty of this.
And you know, it's good that we have different opinions on certain things. Otherwise, the show would be kind of boring.
That's right. I really don't have anything else to say on hated. So, what about loved movies that people hate? I'm ready to talk about those.
Well, mine kind of border on horror comedies.
Okay.
Nothing
wrong with that.
There is a horror comedy that I absolutely love. Have you ever heard of the movie Zombie Strippers?
I have. I've never seen it.
Well, Jenna Jameson is in it.
Obviously, as she would be.
And Robert Englund's in it.
There's the hook.
That's the whole reason I watched it. Robert Englund is a sleazy strip club owner. And there is a zombie infection spreading in the city that they're in. Well, the dancers are kind of, you know, not so very good anymore at dancing. There's one girl who's jealous of Jenna Jameson's character because she gets all the good tips, she gets all the good people. Meanwhile, Robert Englund's telling this girl that she's going to start giving the patrons of the strip club face dances and things like that. Really, really, like, just he's a very scummy person in this movie.
Sure.
Well, one of the strippers gets bit by a zombie. She goes out on the floor, and apparently after she gets bit by the zombie, the way she's dancing is just so sensual and everything, and everybody's loving it. So the other one wants to get bit by a zombie, and through it all, chaos ensues. They become more zombified. They end up fighting at one point, and they rip the skin off of each other, and they're just skeletons standing there with
Nice.
just their heads. It's cheesy effects, everything else. There's a scene at the end. I'm gonna just spoil it real quick, but I have to spoil it because you'll probably get a kick out of this. There's a scene at the end. The girl that Robert Englund's character is like, you're gonna start giving the guys face dances. You obviously don't see anything, but she pulls her panties down and she throws them, and it's kind of gross, but they stick to the wall because they're like goopy, and it's very disturbing. And she looks at Robert Englund. She goes, "Time for a face dance." And he's tied to a chair, so he can't do anything about it. Well, just then the military comes in, and Robert Englund's eyes are all black because he's been zombified, but he's still like got his consciousness to him to a degree. And he goes, "Kill me, kill me." And they look at him and they go, "We're gonna take this one back for experimenting." But it is a bad movie. It is, but it's so bad that it's funny.
Yeah.
There's just so much just idiocy to it that you can't help but love it. And Robert Englund, he's on point as always. Even if he's in something goofy, he tends to just be a phenomenal actor. And I love him to death in it. And the women that play the strippers that become zombies, they're just hilarious in it. And every time I watch it, I'm just like, it's so bad that it's good. And yes, it has boobies in it. So, any guy that wants to see some boobies in a horror film, by all means, go.
Not very hard.
Yeah, you can see your boobies. It does have, too, one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen in a horror movie. This guy gets he's outside in a car, and there's a hooker outside, and he didn't know that she had become infected. Well, he wants a little bit of oral action. It doesn't show it, but you hear the chomp.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah, so that's like toward the beginning of the movie, so you see that scene and you're just like, oh man.
Should have hired Lorena Bobbitt for that role. Anyway. That's a deep cut joke for people.
Oh, Lord. Well, yeah, there's one of mine, so by all means, go ahead.
Okay, when you brought that up, it made me remember one that I didn't have on my list, but I put it on my list, and I'm going to piggyback off it because it's in the same vein, a comedy horror movie that I personally never hear anyone talk about. But I remember watching it probably at an age that I was probably a little too young to be watching it, but at the right age because it was probably targeting me because of the humor and stuff in it. And I never could find it for the longest time. Found it on Vudu digital. Was excited as hell, but at the same time trepidatious because I didn't know if I was going to still enjoy it as much as I did. And I did. I love it to death. Ghoulies 3 is my all-time favorite Ghoulies movie ever. 1, 2, I do like. 3, absolute favorite. 4, I don't know what the hell they were doing in that movie. That's not even a Ghoulies movie if you ask me. That's something completely different. But Ghoulies 3 is just, it's like they turned a Looney Tunes cartoon into a horror movie. Because the Ghoulies themselves, they're the little creatures, they have turned into little cartoon characters. And even the way they kill people can be ludicrous. Like they shove somebody into a toilet, like body and all. They kill a woman in a shower using a plunger and pull her face off, and you see like the face pulling off like that. So it's just this big Looney Tunes horror show, and I love it to death. They actually gave the Ghoulies characters or like voices and characterizations this time, which they didn't have in the others. They were just like critters and gremlins and stuff like that. So this one they said, no, let's give them personalities. Let's cut it down to 3 as opposed to however many they had in the others, and let's actually give them personalities. I didn't know this for the longest time, and I wish I could remember all the voices. But the voices they had for the Ghoulies are uncredited actors that we all know, voice actors or just actors in general. One in particular, which I found Like when I heard it or when I heard the name, I was like, yes, of course it's him. And again, I can't remember the other two, but I remember this one. The cat ghoulie is voiced by Richard Kind. And if you don't know his name, you do know who he is. You've seen him in just about any and everything. But he's got that really whiny little voice like this in the movie. I'm doing the cat ghoulie voice if you didn't follow that. But Richard Kind, he talks like this, you know, he's got that, oh yes, I know what you're doing. I know what you're talking about. I see you. He's that guy. You know who I'm talking about. Look him up on IMDb. But he did the voice, uncredited if I'm not mistaken. And the other two actors are other actors I knew as well. And I was like, holy shit, that blew my mind. Not to mention Kevin McCarthy, who's not the terrible GOP senator who's out there doing terrible things, but the actor Kevin McCarthy, who's in such movies like UHF and some other stuff that I can't remember. But these are the two movies I know him from, and I love him in both of them because he always plays a major dick, and he's just so damn good at it, you know? And he just elevates the movie even more, along with the rest of the cast. Matthew Lillard's actually in it. This is like one of his first movies. You see it, he's not like a main character, but he's like a background player. But you can see him. He's like dressed up nerdy, got glasses and everything, the bow tie and the pocket protector and all that. Jason Scott Lee, I don't know if anyone's familiar with him. He actually played Bruce Lee in the Bruce Lee story. He's in the movie. There might be a few other familiar faces you know from other stuff. It's a fun time, you know, if you want something like that. But again, I've never heard anyone talk about it. And if they have, it's always been like, movie's stupid. That kind of, you know, clever criticism that you always hear. But I find it to be an absolute delight. I love it. And it was directed by John Carl Bleecker, who did Friday the 13th, Part 7. So the man responsible for putting Kane Hodder as Jason. So how about that?
That's a win right there.
Yeah. And he's a magnificent special effects guy. Wasn't really big on directing, stuff like that here and there, but he did more special effects and then he got into directing. This is just one of his little hidden gems as far as I'm concerned. But I never hear anyone talk about it, and if they do, it's always negative. So I'm standing up for it. Ghoulies 3, best Ghoulies movie ever. The Three Stooges meet the Ghoulies. That's the best way to put it, because they do that stuff too. The little knock it off, spread out. I love it.
That is wonderful.
If you've never seen it, that's what we're doing. Next time we see each other, we're watching that movie.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, so we could definitely do that. Hell, we could maybe even try to do a watch party or something.
Yeah, dude, we got to do that. Yeah, because
it'd be a ton of fun.
Yeah. Anyway, what's another one that you love that people seem to hate?
So, this movie has finally started to get attention from people, but I know at the time when it came out, it wasn't very popular, and that's Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
There you go. Again,
that is just a fun movie. The clowns look amazing. The whole premise of the movie is just, it's out there. You know, they come to Earth, they put people in cotton candy cocoons so that they can basically drink them.
Yeah.
They have popcorn that creates these like little snake clown head things that are just insane. And it has one of my favorite kill scenes of all time in it. It's when the clown is making shadow puppets, and he makes a T-Rex shadow puppet, and it eats the people. It's one of those movies. I think when it came out, it got slept on, and the whole, you know, even the title, you know, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You're instantly like, well, that doesn't sound good.
Right.
But it's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Like, I honestly think, and I know that I want to do an episode about this. I know that we've talked about it. I think it's a coming-of-age horror film. I think it would be a movie that would be halfway safe for kids to watch.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I watched it when I was a kid, and I think it still holds up today. I still get a laugh out of it when I watch it today. My love for it is just, God, it's almost superficial. You know, it's just, I put it on, it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
That's all I can say about it. You know, the performances are great. You know, they know they're in a cheesy movie. They know it. But, you know, they give it their all. They perform, and it works. But, God, I wish I had more details about these films that I love. I'm not as elegant in saying what I love about them. It's just the whole movie just feels like a wild ride where you're sitting there and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Is this for real? You know, they get in the spaceship, which looks like a giant circus tent, and they fight. I call him Clownzilla. They fight this giant clown that tries to eat their ice cream truck, and it's just the most off-the-wall, ridiculous thing you could ever see, but it's so damn entertaining. Every time I watch it, it's just so damn entertaining. And it's finally getting attention. Over the last few years, it's finally gotten the attention that I think it deserves. People like it. They were going to do a sequel to it. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, they were planning on doing a sequel. If you look it up on IMDb, you can actually see there's a poster for it and everything else. Never happened, obviously, but it would have been fun to explore that whole thought process again.
Yeah.
You know, and again, when I was a kid, there was one scene in it that actually kind of creeped me out a little bit. It was when the guy goes to the police station and the clown has killed the police officer.
Yeah.
And he's using him as a puppet, because they have the lines down the side of his face. They have him looking like, and they're blood. That's what they are. Again, you have a laugh when the clown pulls his arm out of the guy. He goes and flicks his arm a few times, getting the gunk off of his arm. And for a second, you're like, where was his hand exactly? Yeah, but again, it's one of those cheesy movies that I really enjoy, that I really love, and a lot of people used to think it was a junky film, it was a stupid film. A lot of people now are coming around to it, which is wonderful.
You have to know what you're getting into, and I don't feel like a movie called Killer Clowns from Outer Space is not telegraphing exactly what you're getting. So if you can't walk in with an open mind of how silly it's going to be, you've stepped into the wrong film.
Well, and it's that classic campy feel.
Yeah.
And to me, that we've discussed that before, you know, films are campy without trying to be campy, and it works. And Killer Clowns is a perfect example of that. It's campy, it's goofy, it knows not to take itself serious, and it makes for a fun movie.
And shout out to the Kyoto brothers who designed the Killer Clowns. They're the ones that did the Critters, and they've done a lot more things. Those are just two that really are iconic as far as I'm concerned. Their effects work is phenomenal, and just the designs of the clowns themselves is just beautiful. So if there's work of theirs that I'm unfamiliar with or I don't know that they did, then shame on me for not bringing it up, because everything I ever see them do, they're practical. They're always practical, and they always put their best foot forward. I've never seen them half-ass their effects work, and this was no exception. This is probably one of their finest hours outside of Critters, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, to see the clowns, they are so organic looking.
Yeah.
You know, some movies they do monsters, and you can tell clearly that it's fake. You know, it might fool you through some of the movie, but you have your moments where you're like, this looks fake. But you watch Killer Clowns, you see those clowns from every angle, and they look organic, they look real through everything. I don't think there's a moment where you're like, okay, I can see a seam here, or this looks cheesy. You know, it's
Right.
It's kind of like in Jason Takes Manhattan when he punches that guy's head off.
Yeah.
For a second, you know it's a fake head. But you know, the campiness works for me in horror films.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, while we're on the subject of the film, I really missed out on a T-shirt from Fright Rags that I wish I'd have just said, screw it, get it now, because it was a mashup, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, but they were doing a Kiss album cover, so it was like the artwork was the album cover, the title was in the Kiss font and everything, and I was like, God, that's a damn awesome shirt. Do I need it? And I just did this debating back and forth. Now every time Fright Rags comes out with something I really want, and I look at it, I'm like, yep, I want that one. So I'll get it. And that's what I wish I'd have done.
You know, it would have been cool if, you know, since, you know, the designers for Killer Clowns were also the designers for Critters, there'd be an idea. The Killer Clowns have critters as their little pets, and they just send them onto the town. That
would be amazing.
That'd be a crazy film. I'd go watch it.
I'd be down.
But yeah, so Killer Clowns would be another one of those ones that it's not so much a hidden gem anymore, but it is one film that I really liked it before other people really liked it, I think.
Yeah.
What would another one be for you?
Oh boy, I got a good one. I'm glad this one popped into my head too, because I had a few written down that I was just like, are they really that hated? Because I've heard people say stuff, but then I remembered one. This one came out of the blue, and I was like, I'm so glad I remember this one because I know people hate this film, and I'm going to defend it right here and now. Friday the 13th Part 5 is not a bad movie. I said it. I said it. If you want to fight me, let's go. I understand it doesn't have Jason in it, but let's break it down for a moment, shall we? Because what is the movie but the antithesis of the first movie? Instead of a mother, it is a grieving father who lost a child, who wasn't right in the head. And what does he do? He goes on a killing spree. He just uses Jason as a visage to kind of get that whole ball rolling. Now, should it have been more of a mystery? Sure. I'm sure we could have pieced it together because they didn't really hide the fact that it wasn't Roy. I mean, I guess they did, but they really could have turned it into a whodunit. You know what I mean? Which I think would have been amazing for a fresh start. You do the whole similar aspect, but I mean, they phoned it in right there. The whodunit aspect to me would have been beautiful, like to the point where you're like, I don't understand it. This almost felt like they said, well, we got to have a killer, and we'll just make it this guy. Have no context to who he was to the guy that died. Just like out of the blue. It's like, oh yeah, that was his kid. Well, where the fuck did this come from? What? All that aside, it's a fun movie. It's you get your blood, you get your gut, you get your boobs, you get your crazy campiness, you get some pretty terrifying scares, some, pretty good kills in my opinion. I love Ethel. That's like one of the biggest highlights. I got an aunt that is Ethel all the way. Like, every time I see her, that's my Aunt Betty right there. So if you want to know what kind of person she is, Ethel. And Reggie the Reckless, you can't. Kid was a natural actor. You had Miguel Nunez Jr. as Demon, his brother. And I love, one of my favorite lines in the movie is he's sitting there and trying to, because he ate damn enchiladas. And he runs off to the outhouse. And then his girlfriend starts messing with him. And she's like, oh, you'll feel a lot better after you shit. And he's like, I'll feel a lot better when I'm out of here. This shit box is gross. I just love it. I don't know. It's a quotable movie to me. So, yeah, I love this movie. I will defend it forever and ever and a day. I find it entertaining. And I understand why people don't like it because it doesn't have Jason. But remove that. You have all the elements, you just don't have your Jason. You have a Jason substitute, which it works.
For what that movie is, that worked perfectly for it. Yeah. And I've seen it several times. It's actually up there with some of my more favorite films because it's just like you said, it's a lot of fun. And let's face it, for a Friday the 13th film at that point in time, that was exactly what you needed out of a Friday the 13th film.
Yeah, and they were trying something different. They were trying, at least they didn't try to reinvent the wheel like Halloween 3 or I know there was another one I just heard about the other day that was decided to go in a different direction. It might have been Friday the 13th, and that didn't happen.
Now, I will say this, since you brought it up. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Michael Myers is not in it. That's true. Mm-hmm. If you go back and you watch it, though, it actually is not a bad movie. It gets a lot of hate too. It's not the best movie ever, but it's not a bad movie. I will give it credit there. I think it's a halfway decent film for what it is.
It's one of those that I definitely watched and dismissed immediately. And I did go in with the knowledge it's not a Michael Myers movie, but I guess when you're thinking, if you can remove the fact that it's called Halloween, if the movie was just called Season of the Witch, and that's what it was, and you take away that preconceived notion about what you think a Halloween movie is, yeah, that's what I need to do in my brain. I need to just watch it fresh, not a Halloween movie. It's just Season of the Witch. That's what the movie is. That's what it is, on its own merits. Yeah. And I've yet to do that. I do have it on 4K, I will say that. I did get the special Shout Factory editions. I need to watch it again. I want to watch it again. I want to give it the fair shake that it deserves because, like you said, it's not a bad movie. I just had it in my head wrong. Yeah.
Speaking of one-off sequels that got a lot of hate that I absolutely love, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Yeah. The film that really affected Mark Patton, who is, for those of you listening, who do not know, is one of the sweetest people you will ever meet in person. He's a very nice guy. He's very soft-spoken. As long as you're polite to him, he's polite. But that movie gets a lot of hate. It had a lot of undertones. I think at the time, people were very closed-minded. It even talks about it. It had a lot of gay undertones in it at the time. And in Hollywood, that was kind of a taboo thing in that time frame. And the movie kind of gets forgotten. People don't particularly care for a lot of the characters in it. Robert Englund's not in some of it because they actually tried to hire somebody else to play Freddy because there was an issue with negotiations of his pay, but they realized they couldn't do it without him. Mm-hmm. But the film offers a lot. Jesse Walsh, who is the character that Mark Patton plays, is a solid character. Yeah. You know as well as I do the Nightmare on Elm Street script that I worked on, which will be another podcast. It actually has him in it. I will say that because I always felt like that character deserved another shot. He deserved redemption.
Sure.
But he's a solid character. And the film did something that I think a lot of people kind of ignore. They gave us one of the best looking Freddy Kruegers we ever got because he looks amazing in the film. They also gave us one of the scariest versions of Freddy because he's scarier in part 2 than he was in part 1 because he's not in part 1 a lot. He's only in about 7 minutes or so of part 1. Yeah. Part 2, he is terrifying. He doesn't have any of his funny little one-liners yet. Part 3, he got some one-liners, and he was still pretty scary in part 3. But part 2, he is just vicious. The scene where they're having the pool party, and he possesses Jesse. He kills Jesse's best friend. He's in this party, and he's killing all these teenagers. He's not toying with them. He's not playing with them. He's just killing them. And then the one kid keeps saying, "We can help you. We can help you. We can help you." And he looks at him. He goes, "Help yourself, fucker." And then he goes on this fucking killing tangent. That movie gets a lot of hate. It's a solid movie. I think people didn't like some of the undertones. I get it. People are bigots and they're racist and, people hate other people for the dumbest reasons, and they shouldn't hate people. But also, it did something that a lot of people didn't like. Freddy was the dream demon. He was this killer that could get you in your dreams, and now he's coming out into the real world possessing someone. That's different. They tried something different. It didn't quite work how they wanted it to work, but I will defend that film. It's a solid film. And like I said, there's characters in that film that deserve redemption, that deserve a lot more than what they got. I wish that Jesse would have been in more Nightmare on Elm Streets. I would have loved to have seen him and Nancy together.
That would have been cool.
And, Mark Patton actually did he did Scream Queen, which is on, I believe it's on Shudder still, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And he also did a book. It's called Jesse's Lost Journals. It's where it talks about everything that happened to Jesse through Nightmare on Elm Street. Mm. And again, like I said, I will defend that film until I can't defend it anymore because it is a fantastic film. These franchise films that have these one-offs that are weird and, they tried something different, most of them are actually solid films, but they get a lot of hate because they were different at the time. Wasn't what people were expecting, and it didn't go over well for that.
Yeah, I could see that. I will even admit the very first time I watched part 2, something felt off. I wasn't 100% sure what it was because at my age I wasn't processing things a certain way, but I could tell there was something off about it for me. And later on, I learned about the gay undertones and things of that nature. Also, Freddy them trying different things with the character where he didn't quite feel like it was a different characterization. Unlike part 1, part 3, 4, and so on, it just something felt just a little off. And, I did kind of hold it in low regard at one point, but over time, I found a new appreciation for it. I can see how to view it through a different lens and where I can appreciate it on an entirely different level. I do appreciate it. Like you said, Mark Patton, phenomenal guy. Hate what the movie did to him. It was unfair, bunch of bullshit. And I would definitely recommend Scream Queen to anybody who is either a fan of Nightmare on Elm Street, fan of that movie, whatever, or maybe you just want to see where this guy wound up. he's back out there. He's doing it. I'd love to meet him at one of these cons. Hopefully he'll make it to town one day or somewhere where I can meet him because I would love to.
Yeah, and I've met him once. I didn't get to actually be at his booth, but I kind of like met him in passing at his booth. I said hello. We chit-chatted for a second. But yeah, you know, this affected his life, the way that film was perceived and everything. And, you know, I feel kind of bad that it affected him the way that it did because he didn't deserve that at all, you know.
It really ruined his career.
A lot of it did, yeah. And it's, you know, I mean, I'm going to come back to Nightmare on Elm Street real quick, but I want to say this real quick. Look at Rocky Horror Picture Show, you know. For the longest time after that film came out, Tim Curry had some trouble finding work, but
And
you know
all
he
because
ended
of
up
some biases.
yeah. But you know now that film's like a cult classic. Tim Curry is a household name. You know it sucks that things had to happen the way that they did, but you know it's just one of those things. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and be like, this is good, like it.
Yeah.
It is good. But to come back to Nightmare on Elm Street just real quick, you know. After they did all these other Nightmare on Elm Streets, after they did Freddy's Dead and everything, they took a note. Wes Craven kind of took a note, and I feel like he kind of took a note from Part 2. They did Wes Craven's New Nightmare. They changed up the story. They made it something different, but they made Freddy dark again. They made him scary again, and it worked. It was a big success.
I feel like that's an underrated little gem. I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, but I really enjoy it. I thought it was a very clever idea.
There are a lot of people that I know that are like hardcore Nightmare on Elm Street fans, and they struggle because normally with the list, like when people list what their favorite ones are, normally Part 3 is at the top of that list for a lot of people. But I've noticed a shift where a lot of people are going, you know, I think I actually like Wes Craven's New Nightmare a little bit more than Part 3. I think Part 3 would be my second choice, and I could see why. It's definitely unique. You know, I'll give Wes Craven credit there all day long. He knew how to do something unique. Yeah. And I think he really hit it on, you know, he hit it right on the head with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, you know. It's a fantastic film. And another fun fact, two fun horror facts today. The park where Heather Langenkamp's son is playing in the film, they had to get permission to use that park. And the park said, here's the deal. You can use our park, but we don't want to be known as the Freddy Park.
Fair enough.
You have to get us new equipment. Studio was like, okay, that's fine. We'll get you new equipment. Well, the little boy who played Heather Langenkamp's son, his parents were like, what are you guys going to do with the old equipment? You know, our son really loved playing at this park. And they said, well, we would just scrap it. Do you want it? And they were like, if you guys would deliver it, yeah. So they delivered it to his house and they set it up. So the park that he was playing in the movie was in his backyard while he was growing up.
I feel like I heard that on was it the Big Freddy documentary they did? They probably talked about it on there. Yeah. I feel like I remember hearing that. Yeah, that's cool.
And honestly, I might have told you about it too and forgot about telling you.
No, I mean, I feel like I've heard that story, but it was vague. Like, the more you started talking about it, I was like, yeah, that does sound familiar. So I think it was probably on that documentary. But yeah, that's cool.
Now, I'm sure we could think of more films that we like. Do you have some other ones that you are popping into your head? I mean,
not like the others are. 'Cause I mean, when I was sitting there thinking about ones that I love that no one likes, it was a little hard to come up with. Like, trying to find ones that aren't universally loved feels a little harder sometimes in the horror genre, you know, because usually there's like this consensus, even if it's a cult consensus, there's a consensus where like people are like, yes.
Yeah.
And granted, the two that I pulled out of my head, they weren't even on my list initially. They just popped in there. It was like, you know what? This is a good one. That's a good one. So I don't really know if I have another one I want to bring up.
You know, in all honesty, there was one I was kind of thinking of, but I think it would be better reserved for another episode. I think we should do an episode about under the radar films.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of films that people really like, but they're under the radar. As far as movies that I love that other people hate, I don't really have any other ones either.
Okay. Well, so, I think that wrapped it up.
I think that has wrapped it up. Before I let you do what you're best at on here with telling people where to find us, I just want to say
a lot better today.
I just want to say to all the listeners out there, thanks, of course, for listening to us. And we would love to get feedback. We're going to give you our Twitter page. It's going to be at the link below the show. Everything else, let us know what films you guys love that you think other people don't love, and vice versa. Like, give us the information. If we forgot something that you would like us to talk about, bring it up. You know, we want to get that feedback from you guys. We want you guys to feel as a part of this community. We want to bring the community together, and we want to make it something unique, guys. So you'll know where to find us. Steven, I'll let you do your closing out because you do it so much better than I do.
Well, like Lester said, you want to know, you want to let us know how you felt about today's topic, which was, hey, what horror movies do you love that people hate? Or what horror movies do you hate that people love? You can tell us on Twitter at Horror Rambling. But maybe you've got more to say than, a tweet just won't do. In that case, you can send us an email at horrorramblings@gmail.com. If you want to do all the things that help us out, and you want to just say nice things, you can say hateful things too, but we prefer if you'd say nice things, because that helps us out. Why not head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review? You get to express your feelings. You help to grow the show at the same time. And you can also do that very same thing at Spotify if you're so inclined. I don't know how all that works. You got to listen to a few episodes and then you can do it. I think that's how it works. I've only done it a few times, but it's all appreciated and all the same, if that's what you want to do. Plus, while we're talking about it, I'm trying actively to create questions for the listeners that you can find on Spotify and you can respond to. So be sure that if you're on there, take a look. And there should be questions that you can respond to on Spotify that we can then get feedback on. So just making you aware of that little thing. So like for our first episode, what was your introduction to horror? That's the question. Answer away. Let us know and we'll read it out on the show. That's the beauty. That's the community part of it. More importantly, tell your fellow horror fiends to search for Horror Ramblings on the preferred podcasting platform. If we're not on there yet, I'm working on it. If nothing else, you can keep up with any and all things at pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings. That's horror-ramblings. And just put a little pin in it when you find it. And you'll never have to worry about it again. And as always, links are in the show notes down below for your convenience.
Until next time, guys, stay spooky out there.
This has been the Horror Ramblings Podcast. Join us next time for even more horror.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.